toys now. Yeah, my wife just bought an
Yeah.
electric bike.
Absolutely. I mean,
Oh.
you're,
How do those
that's
work
not on
out?
the agenda for tonight,
So far,
so.
so good. I got about 10 miles on it, but it's,
So,
it's quite a toy.
Do you have to recharge, do they recharge as you're going along?
Georgia, I don't have the green sheet.
Sorry.
Okay, here we go. You just have one matter on?
Yeah.
Well, good. I got 100 miles to drive.
You guys need an agenda, or you think you know the order? I would think, but I'll leave that to the chair.
What's that?
If you wanted to do the continuations before opening their hearing.
Are they waiting for someone? No, you can just go first and just,
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just go for the others.
And no one's joining virtually tonight.
okay, are they ready?
Yes. I'll tell him to do the counting.
How long you
So
want
what
to
are-
take for?
At least till Monday, probably, yeah.
All set?
Yeah, we're on there.
Good evening. Welcome to the Danvers Conservation Commission meeting for Thursday, May the 26th. We operate under the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and Chapter 26 of the Town of Danvers General Bylaws, the Wetlands Protection Bylaw. After each applicant presents his or her request and the board has had time to ask questions and discuss the project, we will accept questions from the audience. Because this is a public meeting, it is required by law that you give your name and address before you speak. Although we may disagree on any issues raised, all persons present during this meeting are expected to be civil to all other meeting attendees. This includes the members of the commission, staff, abutters, concerned citizens, and property owners and project applicants. We also request that you confine your questions to the project and only as it pertains to the Wetlands Act. We cannot handle, nor do we have jurisdiction regarding such things as noise or traffic. All problems not related to the Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Danvers Wetlands Protection Bylaw must be taken up with other boards. Moving forward, we'll roll call the members. Peter Wilson is present. Vanessa Curran is not.
She's absent,
Chelsea King,
and she's absent as well.
Ann McGill,
Here.
and Mike Splain.
Yeah.
Okay, so with three, we do have a quorum, so we will proceed. First item on our agenda is a notice of intent for 10 Tibbetts Ave, a DEP file number. Actually, they do not have a DEP file number as of yet. The applicant is Michael Hubbard, and your representative is? Bob. So, the floor is yours, Mr. Griffin.
Bob, I do have it behind you if that,
Oh, you want me to move that?
whatever's easier for you. If you want me to remove,
It's blocking the screen.
Can I move this closer?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe you could put it over here.
Over this way. Right in front of us here.
Well, the audience needs to see too.
Yeah, well then,
How's that?
well, they can move up too.
Yeah, I think that works for you.
Yeah, that's better.
I know you all have done a lot of projects in Tibbetts Avenue in the last few years, but we're running out of houses to rebuild. This one is probably one of the worst ones that was down there. And if you recall, or if you had a chance to drive by somewhat recently, there's a very dilapidated building on the parcel right now. So here's, some views of the building. This is from when we presented this project to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And if you went inside the building, the floors are all topsy-turvy and nothing's square and level, and it looks worse inside than it does outside, and it looks pretty bad from the outside. So earlier this year, we went to the Danvers Zoning Board of Appeals with our proposed plan, and we were able to get special permit relief to reconstruct the building in the same location. We also went to the Danvers Historical Commission due to the age of the structure, and they determined that the building was not historically significant and not preferentially preserved. So Mr. Hubbard, and that's him in the back corner there, is able to pull a demolition permit to tear down the building once we get our conservation materials in order. So our lot is fairly narrow. It's, you can see from this aerial photograph, about 50 feet wide and about 130 feet deep. This is 50 feet wide, 130 feet deep. This is our guy right here, number 10, with similar size buildings, number 8, number 6 Tibbetts, number 12 Tibbetts down here. And I'm gonna flip to our existing
Excuse me,
conditions
one
plan.
quick question. What is number 12? Is that, that looks like there's construction activity there?
I'm
Or
not
maybe
exactly
it's
sure the
just-
date of this photograph. I think this was within the last year, but I think number 12 has not had any recent construction work done to it. Mike, is that correct?
Yeah, no, he has a lot of debris and
Okay,
boxes for
we just gave a permit to another, maybe it's number 6? Is number
So
6?
Number 6, there was a garage addition recently, yeah.
No, there was one I thought they knocked it down. They made like a big house, like 3 floors.
There was some work on the opposite side of the cul-de-sac that I think involved some tear downs and some rebuilds in the last few years.
Okay, it doesn't matter, I suppose.
And there certainly could have been a project that I just don't know about. So, here's our existing conditions plan. And basically, we took our site plan, which had existing and proposed on it, and because it's such a small lot, it was a little cluttered, and we separated it out. And I know that George has got a copy on the, to put up on the computer. But basically, again, for existing conditions, so here's our existing building footprint. It's about 1,700 square feet. It's a single story, as you saw in the photographs. There's a shed next to the building, a little patio off the back, and then some lawn and a gravel driveway here. The wetland resources that we have to deal with is the river, and we have a sort of a muddy area here, which is considered coastal beach, and then we have a salt marsh that comes up towards the lawn, and then we have a lawn in the backyard. So we also have a mean high water line just sort of in the middle of that salt marsh area there. Our 100-foot buffer from the edge of the salt marsh puts us back here. So you can see there's 100 feet from here to here, so the entire lot is really in the buffer zone. And the entire lot's also in the flood zone, because the flood zone here is elevation 10, and all of this land around the building and out towards the river is about elevation 7 to 6, in that range. And if we go back and look at the aerial photograph, you can see there's pretty distinct changes in vegetation between the salt marsh and the lawn. You can see the distinct vegetation change between the salt marsh and the coastal beach area. And here's our mean high water line right there. So relatively easy to distinguish these areas when you're on site. The salt marsh also wraps around onto the number 12 property, and that's why when we look at our offsets, our Danvers 35-foot no disturb zone line, it comes up with that sort of hockey stick shape. Here's our 50-foot no build zone here. And the existing building is obviously within the no disturb zone, it's within the no build zone, same thing for the shed and the patio. It's just such a small lot, and obviously predates your regulations that we have these existing encroachments into those areas. The other thing I want to point out before I get too far is, we recently did some test pits next to the building. We were very concerned, due to the poor condition of the building, that we might have very soft soils, also our proximity to the salt marsh. And so we wanted to make sure that we were going to present a foundation design that made sense and we could live with. And it turns out that the soil conditions when you get down about 4 feet are actually pretty good. So the very poor structural condition of this house is really due to just poor carpentry, poor construction. So we're going to be able to put in a conventional spread footing type of foundation. If you look at other houses nearby, they're really in solid shape, even if they're 10, 20, 30 years old. So if it's built right, it'll stand up well here. And we were able to determine that from those test pits.
So it is going to be a whole new foundation?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Conventional spread footing foundation. It's going to be significantly different from the existing building in that we're going to have a real crawl space. So there will be a crawl space at the adjacent grade with a flood openings, as we've put on some other structures down in the neighborhood.
Right.
It'll also have a concrete surface on the crawl space to keep rodents from living down there. And we've elevated the first floor up at elevation 11.75. So that's a little higher than is required by code. The code would require 1 foot above the flood elevation for your finished floor. We're 1 foot and 3/4 above the flood elevation. So, and we were able to do that while still conforming to the height requirements, and that was all shown to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Now, you can see that the proposed house is going in really essentially the same location as the existing house. The architect has been able to design a 2-car garage into the front of the building here. So we're gonna take those parking spaces that are currently next to the building and get those into the building, so that'll be better for the environment. We do have a 400 square foot driveway, which is gonna drain back out into the drainage system in Tibbetts Avenue. There's a couple of catch basins here and here that will be tributary to that runoff.
The asphalt?
Yes. And I think that's actually wise, because, you know, there's always issues about things dripping from cars, even though we try to keep them in good condition. And I think the pavement is actually protective as opposed to having those pollutants just go down into the ground. Particularly where we have, you know, reasonably good catch basins close by, which provide some level of treatment, as you know. Now, we're gonna have landscaping all around the building. We're gonna take roof runoff and put it into an infiltration trench on this side. We don't have great soil conditions. We have sort of clayey soil conditions, but, you know, getting as much water into the ground and letting it percolate slowly as possible is what we're trying to do here. And because we're elevating the building up, we don't have to worry about creating a wet basement condition. So I think it's gonna work fine. We're gonna have more water getting into the ground probably than currently exists. We are adding a patio to the back of the building. It's sort of in the same general area as the existing patio, a little further certainly from the salt marsh, but this patio will be essentially at the floor elevation here, and then there'll be a small patio down at grade just beyond the upper patio here. So this is about 175 square feet in the upper patio, which will get the most of the use, is around 500 square feet. The lower patio will be built of pervious pavers, so we get some infiltration in that area as well. We're not trying to encroach any closer towards the salt marsh or towards the river. We are adding, as part of our landscaping, a hedge along the back here, and we're trying to create a visual distinction between the salt marsh and the lawn area. I think it'll also help keep the soccer balls from going into the marsh or into the river. And by making the hedge out of beech plum, it'll be, you know, certainly a salt tolerant plant. It won't grow up real tall, create a visual problem from the homeowner as well. So I think that's a good addition here, as well as just bringing the property into proper maintenance. We were required to submit some information about the amount of work in the 35 and 50-foot no-build zones as part of our plan, and I know it's on the plan. It's probably a little hard to read, but I'll give you the Reader's Digest summary here. When we look at the amount of work in the 0 to 35-foot zone, we have a slight reduction, and that's partly because we've eliminated this shed here, which here's our 35-foot line. So the shed's being taken out of the project and essentially being replaced by the garage inside the footprint. And so we went from about 1,200 square feet of structure, meaning the building, the shed, the patio, any walkways or driveways, gravel or paved surfaces. So we're going from about 30% of the lot down to about 22% of the lot in the 0 to 35-foot zone. So that's, I think, an improvement there. If we look at the 0 to 50, we're going from 2,100 to 2,048, so a slight reduction, about 100 square feet when we look at the amount of work in the 50-foot zone. So certainly this is most of the building, the patios, all of that sort of counts towards that number, but it's certainly no worse than the existing conditions. We've got a couple of details here. This is erosion control. We'll certainly have, you know, the site circled with erosion controls during construction. We've got a grassy swale here. We're trying to pick up some stormwater runoff on this side of the lot and either push it back towards the backyard where the lawn can absorb some, or push it out towards the street here. So that's really what we're trying to do with this shallow swale there. And our infiltration trench, really just an idea of trying to get some water into the ground on this side. And this is the north side of the building. You can see that we're very close to our property line here. If we go back to our aerial, you can see that we've got, you know, a driveway right next to us here. So there really isn't going to be a lot of significant opportunities for growth here, given the absence of sunlight and the height of the building that's going to be there. So I just went with the crushed stone along that 4-foot wide trench area there. We are requesting waivers from the Danvers 35 and 50-foot restrictions. I don't think there's any practicable alternatives. There's no really better location on this lot to locate the proposed structure. The proposed structure will be taller than the existing structure. The existing structure is 1 story. This will be a 2.5-story building. We have, I think we're protecting the resource areas through our comprehensive erosion controls, through our proposed hedge at the perimeter of the site here. We're certainly improving bird habitat and wildlife habitat by the addition of the landscaping. And the other requirement of the Danvers waivers is that we provide a table summarizing these quantities, which of course are on the plan. With that, I think I'd be happy to address any questions.
Okay, Mike, I'll let you start.
All right, thanks. How did you happen to design a swale? What's going on here? Okay. All right. How is it you happened to decide to put in a swale? What was the reason for that?
So we're really just trying to avoid sending runoff towards a neighboring property. So we've got this little section here, and we've got there's a grade change sort of going this way. So we've got a swale going out to carry water this way, and a swale carrying water this way. We're really just trying to keep water from going onto our neighboring
What's the
property.
direction of flow generally?
So, well, generally towards the ocean, but we're at elevation 7.5. At this corner of the lot, we're at elevation 6.5 when we get to the salt marsh back here. So really just about a foot of grade change from here to there. It's really pretty flat.
And in the swale, are you installing like pipes to take the water from the swale?
No, this is just a grassed swale.
It's just gonna hold water and then,
We're just trying to provide a little bit of gradient so that the water will go in the direction of the street. So at the street, we're gonna be elevation 7.2, and when we get to here, we're at elevation 8, so that's about 10 inches of drop from here to here. And heading toward the backyard, we're going from elevation 8 here to, again, about 7 about here, and 6 by the time we get to the end.
okay. So how does the swale, how would it perform? So it fills up, it overflows?
Well, it really is just trying to create a gradient for water to move from point A to point B. And you're right, at some points in time, there won't be enough water to sort of, create a flowing condition, so it'll just absorb down into the ground.
And is that because was there an issue with water with the next door neighbor?
There is no issues with the neighbors, but certainly it's a requirement of the Danvers stormwater regulations that we not put water in the direction of any neighbors. So this addition was intended to address that requirement.
So you're certainly not making things worse, and you may be making them better, is that what you're saying?
I think that's a fair characterization, yes?
All right, and could you explain how you're addressing the, like flooding, so everything will go under? And in other words, if you have some flooding, it'll come under the house and go out to the...
Yeah, let me see if I might have the architect's drawings might show this. Not so much.
Said the foundation has to have those supports in it.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking, yeah.
Well, start with this one. So here's our architectural plan, and you can see that, the garage is here. This happens to be elevation 8.5, I think. And the first floor is a little bit higher, it's about here. This is 11.75. And our flood zone elevation is 10, so that's about here. So in our garage doors, for example, we can have flood openings that when the flood waters come up, these doors turn 90 degrees and allow water to come in. The garage would flood up to elevation 10 in a 100-year storm, and then the water would naturally recede after the storm is finished. Likewise, there will be panels on the side of the house, so there'll be, panel here, here, and here. The building code prescribes how many of these openings need to be placed in your foundation walls, but the same idea. The flood waters come up, the water goes into the crawl space without any human intervention required.
And these are engineered, you mentioned doors or something?
Yeah, they're called, there's different types of openings. You can have, it can be as simple as a CMU block set on the side, but in the case of the houses that I've been involved in down in Tibbetts Point, we've used engineered flood openings that are built of stainless steel, and they automatically turn when the floodwaters come up. They've got some styrofoam floats inside it, and they're also desirable because they prevent raccoons or small animals from getting in. The floodwaters allow, these floats.
They stay closed till the water
Yeah, there's
opens
a little
them?
magnetic catch, but until that water comes up and these floats that are inside move, the door stays closed.
There'll be
And-
several houses down there.
And that works for the parking garage, for the garage as well as the house?
Yeah, both the garage and the crawl space will have flood openings in them.
Yeah. What's the max height in that area?
It's not very tall, so if the crawl space is around 8.5, which is,
No, but I mean the overall house, what's the height of the,
the overall height from the lowest grade adjacent here to the very peak of the roof is 32 feet. I think the zoning requirement is 30 feet to the midpoint of the highest gable. So there's no waiver or relief from building height required.
yeah. Is that similar to the height of houses, other houses there?
It is, yeah, of the new houses anyways.
The new ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as stockpiling, as a construction, this is a whole new house and a demolition, so what's the plan on that?
Logistics are probably one of the more difficult parts of this project. You can see that the house is here. We've got some room to do some stockpiling out back, and we'll certainly have all the erosion controls we need out here. But, it's gonna have to be bring in the materials you need each day, because you don't have a whole lot of room for stockpiling here. And so, once the shell of the house is up, then, all the construction materials can be loaded into the building itself, but, just getting the foundation in is gonna be a little bit of a slow process, and it's gonna require some, small excavators moving around the building and moving materials around.
Does the old house contain asbestos, like asbestos shingles or anything of that nature?
I think that the house has wooden shingles on the side, and if there was any asbestos inside, it would have to be removed prior to getting a demolition permit. I don't know if has an asbestos survey been completed, Michael?
We had a survey yesterday, and we didn't get the results back. He didn't think there's any, but we're waiting for the report.
But no asbestos shingles outside? No? Okay, some of the older houses had that. Let's see, is that all I had? Direction of flow, the beach, the plum, what did you call the,
Plum.
beach plum? That'll thrive there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good salt tolerant plant.
Okay, that's all my questions, thank you.
Welcome.
Ann?
In terms of the demolition, is everything going to be taken out at once?
I mean, it's such
I mean, it's a small house.
It's a small, I think it's, one day it'll get collapsed and it'll be put into some dumpsters, and it may take more than a day certainly to get all the dumpsters filled and out of there, but it's not gonna take a long time.
The closeness with the neighbor, now, this neighbor, it has the somewhat upheaval in the backyard there. So the hedge is going to be strictly on that property, on the building?
So I think the hedge begins right up roughly here, and it comes down like that. And there'll be a small gap in there so that we could allow somebody to go out to the Saltmarsh if they wanted to, but that was the idea.
So you are allowing privacy, but you're also keeping your demarcation line?
Well, and there's an existing fence here, but we are proposing to improve the fence along this property line, so it'll be a nice-looking fence when we're done with the
Okay, so the-
landscaping next to it.
So the fence is on that property?
Yeah, I think I might. I mean, it's right on the line, so there's gonna have to be some coordination between the neighbors, but let me see if I've got a picture of that fence. Well, you can sort of see it there. In that picture.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the
So
side.
it's an existing
picture
fence,
up there.
it's not a new fence?
Is that water?
But we are proposing
I
a
think
new
it's
fence.
snow.
Okay, so
But you're right, there is an existing fence there. I'm sorry?
Michael thought
I was
there might
just
be
wondering,
water
is
in
that
that
water
bottom
or
right.
snow I see?
This is snow right there.
Oh.
Okay, so the changes in elevation are really the flood controls. When you're
Well,
talking
we're
about
raising the building up
Okay.
because of the flood zone and to make the building compliant with the current building code requirements. And we are adding a little bit of grass in the back, or a little bit of fill, 1 to 2 feet, to raise up the lawn so that it grows better. And again, I think just trying to make it distinct from the salt marsh and sort of
Okay.
a more useful play area.
Okay, so that'll be up.
A little bit above existing, not a lot.
Okay, so that,
You'll still step off the patio, go down about 2.5 feet to get to the grade and into the backyard.
thank you.
What's that?
Yeah.
The swale, is that right on the property line, or is it totally within the applicant's property?
It's within the application, so the center line of the swale is here, which is gonna be about, the center line's about 5 feet off the property line.
Okay, and what are the dimensions of that
Oh,
swale?
it's not very deep, I mean, we're showing a 6-inch deep swale,
That's it?
yeah.
So it's easily mowed?
Oh, yeah, we want it to be mowed and maintained and, look like it's part of the landscape, not necessarily like
Okay.
it's like a civil engineering feature.
All right, so, and I guess the other thing that I have is that there's gonna be a lot of disruption within our jurisdictional areas, within the 35 and the 50. And what are your plans for getting that back to a suitable condition after construction is completed?
Well, we're gonna landscape the property completely. We're gonna have erosion controls all, throughout the construction phase so that, dirt doesn't escape towards the resource areas at all. But, I think once these areas are stabilized with lawn and plantings next to the house and plantings along the perimeter here, it'll be quite stable and it'll be a lot better than existing conditions.
Okay, yeah, because when we grant waivers, we want to see good
Yeah.
things come of it in the
Yeah.
end. So we will be looking for some sort of guarantee that all gets,
The survivorship
Got it.
of those plants, for example.
Yes.
I see, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Could I just ask, and does somebody oversee that process to make sure that, as Peter suggested, that we pay attention to the 35 and the 50 and we restore everything?
I mean, we can certainly stake those areas during the construction phase so you know where they are. I think what's most important probably is getting a good as-built plan when the construction's complete and,
Right.
the application for the certificate of
I would,
compliance is made.
I would think we'd ask for some sort of
Stake the-
bond,
Okay,
just to make sure that it gets put back, especially with the salt marsh too. We really want to protect the salt marsh.
fair enough.
So, you still have stormwater approval required?
Yep.
Right? And you don't have a DEP number?
That's correct.
Right.
Well, that's as far as we can go, isn't it?
Where will you put the dumpsters for
So-
the,
So there is space, there's enough room next to the building here, in this corridor here, to put dumpsters, so.
okay, so be off the street, and just, okay. Just one other thing, Georgia, this is a question around logistics. With Vanessa and Chelsea not being here tonight, but we probably would want to have them involved. Would they be able to watch the videotape, and would that qualify them to vote on this down the road?
Correct, so they would need to watch the tape. They would also need to sign a Mullen waiver form, which they sign attesting to watching the meeting and the content. And we keep that in our records, so if they both watch, they're eligible to vote.
Okay, so could you just reach out to them at some point to say?
Absolutely.
Can we, do you think we need to go out there if they're gonna stake it?
That was my next issue.
Oh,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think,
Yeah.
I think I'd like to see the lot.
Fair enough.
I mean, I ride my bike down there fairly often, but I'm sure
I
members
like
of the
it.
board in an official capacity would like to see it.
Good time of the year for sidewalks.
What's that?
It's a good time of the year for sidewalks.
Yeah.
I'm
You
happy
could
to.
stake it, the 35 and the 50, we would see what we're looking at, we know what we're looking at.
And once that's staked, I'm happy to work with Mr. Hubbard, and we can figure out a time for the commission to get to the site.
Okay, now, Mr. Hubbard, you're building this to sell it. This isn't gonna be your home, right? So we'll just have to be thinking that, guarantees down the road when the property sells, that would guarantee what we want to see.
Mhm.
So, we'll just have to discuss that a little bit more deeply when we
And
get to
maybe
a
a
point
bond
where-
amount.
Yes,
We're talking
yeah.
about a bond amount.
Or if he wants to close it out before he sells it and sell it with a
Oh, yeah,
certificate of compliance, that would be great.
yeah. Okay, I don't have any further questions.
I don't.
And are you looking to do this fairly quickly? I mean, are we gonna see you again in 2 weeks with a DEP number, or?
I hope so.
Okay, so just, that means we have to do a site visit within those 2 weeks then, right?
Yep.
And can you arrange that, Georgia?
And we can get some dates that we could all seem to agree on to go out there?
Yeah, well, Georgia's gonna arrange that.
Arrange that, yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay. Is there any public comment? Sir?
Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. Is this the right board to ask about? No, they said he was gonna put the dumpsters on the property. Are they, in some areas down, they've had to put them on the street. If they're gonna be on the property, inside his property, is this the right board for me to ask a question about them?
If you want to talk about them being on the street, so Tibbetts is not a public way. It's a private way. The town does have easements over there, but that island, that center island, is not owned by the town. But if there were to be dumpsters placed in the right-of-way, I'm sure Mr. Hubbard's aware of the process, having done this with 2 other homes on the same street and having he lives on the street too. So for dumpsters in the right-of-way, he'll be in contact with the correct people, the police department, DPW. The dumpsters on the site may also require Board of Health permit for if that is required, and also a building permit with the building inspector, and that applies for whether it's on his lot or not on his lot.
Georgia, thank you.
Welcome.
I'm impressed that staff knows this.
Well, we get these questions all the time from neighbors.
Good. Okay, should we go no further? I think, I'll entertain a motion to continue, please.
Make a motion that we continue the
Public hearing.
the public hearing for 10 Tibbetts Avenue, and hopefully it'll have a DEP file number.
Motion's been made, is there a second?
Is this to the next date? The continuance to our next
Next
hearing?
date,
Did you say June,
Well-
June 9th?
do we have a date?
Is that okay with you, June 9th?
June 9th?
June 9? I second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so
Thank you very much.
hopefully we'll see you then. Next up is a notice of intent for 47 Collins Street, DEP file number 14-1375. I believe that we've had this hearing open before,
Yep.
right? So as of now, the applicant has requested that we continue until our June 23rd meeting. So unless is there any public comment? No other questions? All right, so make a motion to continue, please.
Make a motion that we continue the notice of intent, 47 Collins Street, DEP file number 14-1375.
So what's the next date we're continuing?
June 23rd.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next up is a notice of intent for 41 Choate Avenue. That hearing has never been opened, so that I don't see the need to vote to continue. So they've requested that we continue to June 23rd as well. 152 Endicott Street, was that a public hearing, Georgia? Did we?
That's already been opened.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So they've requested that we continue to June 9th. Is there any public comment before we vote to continue? Seeing none, someone can make that motion.
I make the motion that we continue the hearing to June 9th for 152 Endicott Street.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And just one quick note on 152 Endicott Street. Once they come before us, then we're going to arrange for a site visit after that?
Yeah, so I do have an update on that. Mary Rimmer is going to be doing the wetland delineation next Tuesday, and the applicant's wetland consultant will be joining her, so they'll be reviewing it together. And then I've spoken with Mary and the consultant, and they are available to do a site visit the same week it sounds like the next day, Wednesday, the 8th. So I'll be emailing the commission tomorrow with site visit dates.
Okay, so
And I'll
we've
now
got two
include-
potential site visits.
Yeah, I'll include 10 Tibbetts.
Okay. Is there any old or new business, Georgia, that we need to discuss?
No, that is, I do have, we did receive 2 permits today that will be put on the 6-9 agenda. So that's going to be a certificate of compliance for the yacht club. They finished their dredging and they want to close out that order before it's expired, which is great. So they'll be before us on the 9th. And then 175 Water Street, I forget the name of this place. It's across from Sunnyside Bowl. Yes, thank you, Bill. Onion Town Grill. So that's the address, that's the parcel that has applied. It's going to be Pioneer Charter School, and they have submitted a notice of intent application. So they will be on the June 9th hearing
For new construction?
for new construction. But just so people at home and the commission are aware, the building, and I would say about 85% of that project is in Peabody. The Danvers portion is really the entrances off Water Street, a portion of landscaping and stormwater utilities, but the building itself is serviceable in Peabody.
Okay, all right.
Those are my updates.
Okay, good, thank you. I guess our work is done for this evening, so if someone could make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn the Conservation Commission meeting of May 26th.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good evening, thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Mike,
Have a nice
have
holiday.
a safe trip
Okay,
that
have a good
weekend.
trip now.
And enjoy those kayaks.
Oh, yeah.
Drive safe, Mike.
Bye-bye.
And you took the motorcycle?
What's that?
Did he think he brought his motorcycle?